Hi everyone, my name is Gianna, and today I'll be critiquing the claim that a ketogenic diet, when paired with intermittent fasting, promotes weight loss, improves insulin sensitivity, and reduces insulin resistance in individuals with obesity syndrome. The foundation of my critique is the Obesity Code by Dr. Jason Fung and some peer reviewed research articles that I did look over. So, the Obesity Code does mention low carb diets, but his primary focus in the book that I'd like to point out is fasting. It's not necessarily the keto diet, although my presentation will be over both. So, about the book, The Obesity Code was written by Dr. Jason Fung. He's a Canadian nephrologist. The book is targeted at individuals struggling with obesity, metabolic syndrome, or type 2 diabetes. It really challenges the calorie in, calorie out theory, and he argues that chronic insulin elevation is the root cause of obesity. So, when we're talking about the chronic insulin elevation and his core claim, I'd like to point out something that he mentioned in his book. When a person develops an insulinoma, which is a benign or cancerous tumor on the pancreas, it causes the pancreas or the insulinoma secretes an excess amount of insulin and the patient gains a drastic amount of weight. But whenever the patient is able to get rid of the insulinoma, their weight returns back to normal, which I thought was interesting. So, along with his core claim, he drives that hormonal imbalances are the reason for insulin resistance, not just overeating. And his solution is intermittent fasting and low carb or ketogenic diet, which together reduces insulin levels, allowing the body to burn that stored fat. So, my claim that this combination improves weight loss and insulin sensitivity is a direct reflection of his central idea. And so, a summary of the approach. So, the approach works by minimalizing insulin production through two strategies: the keto diet, which restricts carbohydrates, forcing the body to use fat and ketones as fuel, which is why it's called the ketogenic diet. And then we have intermittent fasting, which is his main driving point in the book, which gives the body extended periods without food, further lowering insulin levels. And together they create a metabolic state that supports fat burning, hormonal balance, and reduced appetite. So I included a video here from YouTube that kind of goes over how the body reacts to fasting.
Fasting can have many powerful effects on your body. But what's happening in your body hour by hour while you're fasting? Let's take a look at the various stages your body progresses through so you can get an idea of all the effects you're experiencing at different points throughout your fast. 0 to 4 hours. Your pancreas produces the hormone insulin. This allows your body to use up the glucose that was released into your bloodstream after your meal and to store any excess energy in your cells for later use. 4 to 16 hours. This is the catabolic or breakdown phase, when all those extra nutrients start being released from storage to be used for energy. Once the energy stored in your cells runs out, your body starts to rely instead on stored fat. The process of releasing fat and burning it up for energy releases chemicals known as ketone bodies for energy, which usually happens around the 16-hour mark. 16 to 24 hours. Glucose in the cells and glycogen in the liver and muscles begin to dwindle rapidly, which causes you to burn stored fat to keep up with your body's need for energy. The production of another chemical, AMP-activated protein kinase, or AMPK, is also triggered at this point. This really increases the amount of autophagy happening all around your body. 24 to 72 hours. Once you pass 24 hours of fasting, your body will enter a state called ketosis, where you're reliant on burning your fat stores for energy. As fat cells are broken down for energy, ketone bodies are created and released into the bloodstream. And 72 plus hours. Once you've been fasting for 3 days or more, your body enters a deep state of ketosis. All the previous benefits, autophagy, the uptick in the production of beneficial chemicals and hormones, fat loss, and mental clarity continue to increase. That said, your thyroid hormones also start to get activated as your body thinks it's starving.
Okay, so that kind of explained fasting a little bit. So now the strengths of his book. So he definitely drew on a lot of clinical experience and treating his patients with obesity and type 2 diabetes, and his explanations were easy to follow, and they really challenged outdated nutritional advice and focused on sustainable habits rather than temporary fixes, so like yo-yo diets. And the weaknesses and limitations. So he did rely heavily on anecdotal stories, and he didn't fully explore opposing views. He tended to oversimplify complex physiological processes, and it's not suitable to follow fasting for every population. At least I don't think. People that are pregnant or people with eating disorders, it could definitely get tricky. And then also, some critics point out that he underestimates the psychological and social challenge of long term adherence, because just like anything, fasting can be hard. Like following any diet, it requires discipline. And some scientific overview. So, this is where the peer reviewed articles came into play. So, the 2020 review talked about intermittent fasting significantly improving insulin sensitivity, reducing body fat, and lowering fasting insulin levels in people with obesity. So, the mechanisms align with Fung's theory that fasting reduces insulin spikes, promotes fat oxidation, and resets that metabolic balance. And then the second case, it was actually a case study in 2023. Although it was done on a man, and I'd like to see how it affected a woman, it did show improved body composition, decreased LDL, and reduced insulin levels, supporting the synergistic benefits of combining both strategies, not just one or the other. But there was some opposing evidence, which was a 2014 study that was published. It compared low carb and low fat diets, and there was similar weight loss results when calorie intake was controlled. So it kind of challenged the idea a little bit that low carb is inherently superior, and it suggests that caloric restriction itself, not just the insulin modulation, is still a major factor in weight loss. Although it didn't include any sort of fasting, it was just the low carb versus low fat. So, as a professional critique, I think the keto and intermittent fasting have legitimate physiological benefits for individuals with insulin resistance and obesity. I think the science supports improvements in weight loss, fasting, insulin, and metabolic flexibility. I do not think it's a one size fits all solution by any means, though. Long term adherence is definitely hard. And then there's the nutritional balance when you're only eating at certain periods of times. And then obviously, medical supervision is critical. Do not start doing anything before consulting your primary care physician, and especially those with underlying health conditions. But as far as my final verdict goes, I support the claim that a ketogenic diet paired with intermittent fasting can be a very powerful tool for improving insulin sensitivity and reducing obesity related health risks. It's not a miracle cure for, obviously, everything requires a little bit of work, but it's a promising option for the right population with growing evidence behind it. In my experience, both fasting and keto can feel extreme at first, but many people report feeling more energy and fewer cravings and clearer thinking once their bodies adapts. I personally have done this diet after reading the book, and I actually did feel a lot clearer minded. I felt like I had more energy, and I actually did lose 9 pounds, even though I didn't think I had any insulin resistance, which was really interesting to me. And I still maintained all my lean muscle mass. I had a great energy. I honestly felt really good, and I continued to practice one of his 16-8, which was 16 hours of fasting and then 8 hours of eating. I really like it, but of course, like I said, don't start anything without consulting a healthcare provider before. But that's all. Thank you.